Imagine if Steve Rogers wasn't played by Chris Evans, who else nearly became the first Avenger? From screen tests to near misses, these actors were this close to donning the suit. Let's break down the full list. When casting Captain America, the first Avenger, Marvel brought in John Krasinski, the beloved Jim Halpert from The Office, for screen tests. He actually tried on the costume and walked a Marvel set shirtless. But as he recounted on Conan O'Brien, Chris Hemsworth, then in full gear, walked by, and Krasinski immediately felt he didn't measure up physique-wise. He gracefully bowed out shortly thereafter. In hindsight, Krasinski embraced the MCU elsewhere, now playing Reed Richards in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Next is Sebastian Stan, now famous as Bucky Barnes. He initially auditioned to be Steve Rogers and impressed enough to be offered the role, but not as Cap. Instead, he became Bucky Barnes, a role that rebooted his career and went even further than originally expected in the MCU. He has since portrayed one of MCU's most complex characters, and though he didn't get the main part, fans widely agree it turned out just right. We also have Chris Pratt, who auditioned for Captain America during the 2010 casting phase. Though he wasn't right for Steve Rogers, casting director Sarah Finn made sure he stayed in mind, and he ultimately became Peter Quill Star-Lord. Marvel evidently loved his charm, but the heroic father figure role went to Evans. Scott Eastwood, son of Clint Eastwood, was another serious contender. He screen tested for Steve Rogers but didn't get the part. Though he's had major films, The Longest Ride, Wrath of Men, the Cap role slipped by. Wilson Bethel, later seen playing Bullseye on the Netflix Daredevil, auditioned and even screen tested in the Captain America suit. He met with the director, tried on costume, and got close, but ultimately didn't land the role. He described it as an insane period where he thought he'd really get the part. Ryan Felipe, 90s teen heartthrob, also auditioned. He said in 2010 that he was very excited, especially for his young son, but was ultimately passed over. According to Screen Rant and Business Insider, he met with Marvel but was not selected. He later commented that it would have been awesome, but the part went to Evans. Two other names frequently mentioned are Kellen Lutz and Alexander Skarsgård. Lutz, best known as Emmett Cullen in Twilight, reportedly wanted the part, but was turned down by Marvel. Skarsgård was apparently considered for both Captain America and Thor, but didn't make the shortlist for either position. Some sources once claimed Jensen Ackles auditioned, but he actually denied ever trying out. According to the actor himself, it never happened, though Chase Crawford did test and was shortlisted per Ackles. In contrast, Scott Porter confirms he was one of the final four contestants, alongside Evans, Bethel, and Mike Vogel. On Watch What Happens Live in June 2025, Porter said losing felt like a kick in the nuts after seeing fan-made Cap edits with his face convinced him that he might get it, only to lose out at the last moment. Finally, magazines and fan sites have listed some major surprising names. Channing Tatum was reportedly considered but likely not offered, possibly salary issues. He later stars different hero in other franchises. Dane Cook auditioned to gain unwanted attention for breaking Marvel's secrecy, issuing a public policy to casting director Sarah Finn. Even Joe and Kevin Jonas reportedly read for the role in early casting rumors, though they didn't go far in the process. So why ultimately Chris Evans? According to casting director Sarah Finn, she saw in Evans a rare moral fiber that fit the character's soul. It wasn't just physical. Steve's inner decency had to feel genuine. Evans himself said he declined the role 3 separate times because he was terrified of being typecast, but that courage ultimately whipped up a multi-picture deal beginning with the first Avenger in 2011. History shows sometimes Marvel's biggest risks pay off the most. Let's dive into a fun fan theory. What if some of these actors had gotten this role instead? Imagine John Krasinski as Captain America. It would have been tied into his later MCU Reed Richards, or Sebastian Stan out front, making Bucky a different emotional centerpiece. What would Guardians have been if Chris Pratt had become Cap instead of Star-Lord? Highlight imagine. To recap, the actors who nearly played Captain America include John Krasinski, Sebastian Stan, Chris Pratt, Scott Eastwood, Wilson Bethel, Ryan Felipe, Kellen Lutz, Alexander Skarsgård, Scott Porter, plus rumored names like Channing Tatum, Dane Cook, and the Jonas Brothers. In each case, the story behind the near-miss ranges from physicality to scheduling, loyalty to other roles, or creative preference. Ultimately, Evans embodied the ethic and mystique Marvel wanted. Which what-if casting surprises you the most? Let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more deep dives into Marvel's multiverse of history. Thanks for watching.